Well, we talked to homeowners in this Okeechobee County community, and they said the flooding is just terrible. One gentleman tells me he's been fighting for 4 years, and look, he's still not getting any help.
Scientists are issuing the most urgent warnings Florida's heartland has heard in decades. What began as a calculated, routine act, lowering Lake Okeechobee's water to restore balance, has unleashed a chain of events so unpredictable, footage from the lake's depths has left even veteran experts in disbelief. The world is watching as the waterline recedes from over 700 square miles of the state's inland sea. Homes creak upon newly exposed shorelines. Boats rest awkwardly in marshy mud. But every camera, every scientific sensor, every anxious resident along the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee rivers is asking the same question. What is really moving beneath the surface? In the days following the December 2024 drawdown, satellites picked up ominous plumes, inky black water spreading swiftly from the Big Lake's outlet channels toward both Florida coasts. For the first time, the nation saw the truth. This was no ordinary rainfall discharge, no seasonal flush of algae. It was something far more hazardous. Decades, even generations, of buried agricultural runoff, commonly referred to as legacy mud, broke loose from the once hidden basin. Toxic sediments, saturated with phosphorus, nitrogen, and the remnants of 70 years of intensive farming, coursed through the rivers, painting a dystopian map from sky to sea. The magnitude stunned everyone. Emergency alerts warned the water wasn't safe. Fishermen, water managers, biologists, and local families found themselves spectators to an unfolding disaster, one that surpassed every expectation and every plan. This was not an ecological reset. It was a rupture of the invisible. Chemicals, nutrients, and contaminants long presumed buried, now moving beneath a receding surface, unleashed by the very act intended to heal. The danger does not stop here. While what happened above the waterline has gripped the public, scientists are frantic over what is now mobilizing below and beyond. Each gallon of discharged water carries not just pollution, but the history of poorly understood trade-offs. Coastal habitats begin to darken at the mouth of every affected channel. Submerged grasses collapse, oyster beds wither, and the very framework for drinking water, agriculture, and flood protection comes under siege. The ripple is not just ecological, it is economic. It threatens food, health, and a way of life from the heart of Florida to both salty horizons. How did a single management decision become a perfect storm for environmental catastrophe? What secrets did the lake's draining reveal? And can Florida ever hope to contain what's now been set loose? Let's follow the evidence and find out. The events began with urgency. After a year of torrential rains and mounting stormwater, Lake Okeechobee, North America's second largest natural freshwater lake, had reached a breaking point. Florida's South Florida Water Management District, charged with protecting cities from flooding and maintaining the delicate balance between ecosystem and agriculture, assembled its engineers. With hurricane season over, the threat of flooding loomed large. Levees, some nearly a century old, strained under the mass of billions of gallons. So, on December 7th, 2024, in an act meant to restore ecological balance and buy time for repairs, officials opened both the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee spillways wide. More than 1 billion gallons released, each surged along artificial canals, sending the lake's water out toward the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Locals watched the water slip away, and for a moment, hope flickered. Maybe shrinking the lake would revitalize the marshes, let native grasses rebound, and ward off algae. But those hopes dissolved within days. Satellites from NOAA and NASA recorded a new and disturbing phenomenon. Black water, opaque, heavy, and distinctly unnatural, spread from both outlets like spilled ink. Riverbanks where children fished became enveloped in shadows. Helicopters flying routine surveys captured scenes never seen before. Whole sections of rivers and coastal estuaries swallowed up by dark plumes stretching for miles. The initial question was simple and terrifying for those who understood. If the aim was ecological health, why was the result a spreading blanket of pollution? And what else lay hidden beneath the mud? If you're captivated by these unfolding discoveries and want to stay updated on Florida's environmental crises, be sure to subscribe, share your questions in the comments, and become part of our community confronting these urgent challenges head on. What moved beneath Lake Okeechobee as the water level dropped? Drones and survey teams bore witness to a landscape transformed overnight. Sandbars, long lost to memory, re-emerge. Sunken propellers and abandoned barges sat awkwardly in the sun. Yet nothing drew more attention, or dread, than the churning black plumes spiraling upward from the lake's exposed bottom. Dr. Miguel Estevez, senior biogeochemist with the US Geological Survey, stood at the lake's receding edge and described what he saw as an archive coming undone. For over 70 years, every farm field north of the Everglades, the citrus groves, the sprawling sugarcane plantations, washed surplus fertilizer and animal waste downslope to the central basin. Heavy summer rains loosened mountains of phosphorus and nitrogen, which settled quietly, year after year, into the sediment at the lake's deepest points. On dry days, the mud lay dormant, encased in water and relatively harmless. But when managers lowered the lake with unprecedented speed, dropping water levels by several feet in mere days, the legacy mud became mobilized. Physical disturbance, combined with sudden exposure to wind and flow, sent clouds of contaminants rising through the water column. Every bubble released a chemical past long hidden from view. Fishermen offshore described it as smoke underwater. The stench was sharp, not of algae, but rot, chemicals, and decay. Where waterbirds once picked at minnows, now only black silt drifted in the current. Scientists at national and state water monitoring centers began cross-referencing new sediment samples with records from the last half-century. Their findings shocked even veteran researchers. Phosphorus concentrations had spiked to levels far higher than during previous managed releases. Ammonia and nitrate readings were elevated, well beyond what aquatic life in either the St. Lucie or Caloosahatchee could endure without mass die-offs. And so, a secret crisis revealed itself, not from new mistakes, but from decades of acceptable loss made visible by a single act. As December wore on, the full extent of the disaster emerged in data and on the ground. Real-time sensors installed at the lake's outflows blinked constant red, phosphorus, nitrogen, ammonia, chemical markers surpassing state and federal safety thresholds by several-fold. Biologist Dr. Simone Valente described the lake's exposed bottom in somber terms. With every receding inch, the boundary between past and present dissolved. What was thought locked away by time now rushes into rivers, driven by physics and impossible to recall. Ecologists working at the river mouths compared the scene to a slow-motion spill. But this was not a toxin from a single source. It was the cumulative result of 70 years of Florida's dependence on fertilizer and the presumption that land could accept an unlimited biological load. The immediate effects proved staggering. Oyster beds, already battered by hurricanes and periodic red tides, turned black and lifeless where fresh water diluted the sea and suffocated sensitive mollusks. Seagrass meadows along the Indian River Lagoon and Caloosahatchee estuary quickly collapsed as waters turned brown and light vanished. Dead fish collected in tangles at the mouth of the estuaries, many with pale, bloated bellies, a silent testament to nutrient-driven oxygen depletion. Meanwhile, communities watched anxiously as polluted plumes crept ever closer to beaches and tourist waterways. Tourism officials fielded urgent calls. Was the water safe? Could anyone explain the sudden tide of decay? Researchers at multiple coastal institutes measured dissolved oxygen levels in the water. Their findings confirmed what satellite images only hinted at. A geochemical chain reaction was underway. The flood of phosphorus and nitrogen fed a population explosion of opportunistic bacteria and algae, consuming what little oxygen was left. Dead zones formed rapidly, not in weeks, but in days, leaving swaths of water incapable of supporting life. Every day, the black plumes moved further, carrying with them the story of Florida's choices and their consequences. To outsiders, draining a swollen lake may seem like pure logic, a way to relieve stress on the levee system and avoid flooding. But as the Florida experience in December revealed, every decision at Lake Okeechobee exposes impossible trade-offs that accumulate over time. Dr. Priya Chowdhury, a water systems engineer, coordinated the response as the danger emerged. She explained, "It's never just about one risk. Every drop we send down the rivers relieves pressure here, but threatens lives and livelihoods on the coast. Hold water too long, and the levees might fail. Release water, and 2 whole ecosystems are altered, sometimes permanently." It is a cruel dilemma. Ranchers north of the lake rely on the system to keep fields dry enough for grazing. Citrus growers depend on predictable flows to manage irrigation, pushing nutrients downstream each season. Meanwhile, families in coastal towns like Stewart and Fort Myers know that with every heavy rain, their lives stand only a few tweaks of a floodgate away from ecological crisis. The floodgate is a symbol of the bargain in Florida, a gesture of flood safety for some, an environmental hazard for others. December's event brought a new realization. Those trade-offs, long balanced, have shifted. There is no safe place left for the pollution to go. No section of the state is truly protected when legacy mud comes loose and moves with every current. The water management system that once defined Florida's rise is now the point of greatest vulnerability. If you want to track every twist in this vital story, subscribe right now and join us for science-backed breakdowns of every major environmental event in Florida. Ask your questions below and keep the conversation alive. What scientists raced to understand in the weeks after December's release was this: how could something so carefully engineered, flow rates, sluice gates, pump schedules, produce devastation of this scale? No new pollutant factories lined the lake. No recent surge in chemical use had preceded the flooding. The damage stemmed from the system's own memory. Legacy nutrients, mobilized by a sudden change in water height. As Dr. Estevez remarked, "We were prepared for runoff. We were not prepared for the chemistry of loss." Satellite imagery became the chief diagnostic tool. Analysts compared infrared and color-enhanced images over several weeks in December. The signature was clear. As each billion gallons left the lake, a wedge of black water traveled east and west, radiating outward. Data overlays matched these plumes with readings from automated buoys. The highest concentrations of phosphorus tracked exactly with the leading edge of the black water. Local communities grew alarmed as the water's color darkened, and so did state health agencies. The Department of Environmental Protection issued urgent statements warning against swimming or fishing near the river mouths. Meanwhile, estuarine scientists watched as the black water overwhelmed salt marshes and mangroves. Habitats vital for fish and birds suffered near instant loss of biodiversity. This was not simply an event. It was the reawakening of pollution that no technology, no filter or gate could now contain. The limits of engineered control had been reached. Water systems designed for a different era now buckled beneath the weight of what the earth itself had buried. Why did water that once ran clear now run black? The answer, scientists agreed, was rooted in history. The old lakebed had become a chemical time bomb, its detonation cued by the management systems meant to avert disaster. As winter deepened and migratory birds arrived, Florida's estuaries braced for a second wave of trauma. Within weeks of the initial release, large areas of submerged vegetation in the Indian River Lagoon were buried beneath centimeters of glossy silt. Where manatees usually grazed, now silence reigned. State wildlife crews, accustomed to patrolling for illegal fishers, instead scrambled to rescue stranded turtles and reported dead dolphins along the shore. At a press conference, Dr. Carla Mendoza, an aquatic botanist, explained the dilemma. Plants and animals here only recover when the chemistry changes, but the toxic load spread from Okeechobee will take years, decades in some places, to dissipate. Damage is not just visible in dead fish, but in the collapse of the entire food web. Oysters and clams, nature's filters, were among the first casualties. Unable to survive the water's new chemistry, their populations plummeted to nearly zero in several test sites. With them went the filtration capacity of the estuaries. The result? Every subsequent inflow of polluted water became more severe and widespread. Concurrently, algal blooms accelerated, fed by a surplus of nitrate and phosphorus. The nature of the water's color shifted from black to green, a sickly hue signaling rampant biological overgrowth. Unlike previous blue-green algae crises, the rivers thickened with a slurry of decomposing plant matter, bacteria, and chemical detritus. Superblooms formed, some visible from space as mats, smothering what remained of shellfish beds and grasses. By late January, riverfront businesses began struggling. Tourboat operators, bait shops, and waterfront restaurants, all integral to the local economy, reported sharp declines in business. Visitors wary of toxic water lapping at formerly pristine docks. The aftershocks of a single water release extended far beyond aquatic life. They moved through economy, culture, and even public health. Once released, legacy pollutants moved with a will of their own, indifferent to economic needs or management plans. All along the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee, voices rose, weary but urgent. "What else is hiding under the lake?" fishermen asked at dawn. "Can we ever eat these fish again?" wondered parents, ushering children away from the water's edge. The historic drawdown, meant as an act of healing, had become a symbol of generational oversight. Policies that traded flood protection for ecological risk and promises of safety for persistent uncertainty. In Palm City, longtime resident and local guide Tommy Alvarez met scientists at the water's edge. "We always knew the lake was holding more than just water, but nobody ever imagined it would move like this, all at once." Community meetings turned heated. County commissioners faced angry crowds, desperate for assurances that felt increasingly hollow. Flood control, once universally popular, was now a curse for downstream neighbors. Agricultural communities felt targeted. Coastal towns felt abandoned. Experts assembled panels, geologists, hydrologists, wildlife specialists, seeking any silver lining. Yet, as Dr. Simone Valente summarized in a late December forum, some damage, especially from legacy pollution, is not reversible. All we can do now is track, adapt, and hope recovery is possible over generations. Media coverage shifted, focusing on losses, acres of marshland gone, dollars lost, species endangered. School children wrote letters to government officials, drawing pictures of the teeming wildlife they hoped would return. Satellite before and after images went viral. The lake's old bottom revealed as both a ledger of history and a warning of what can be lost in days. As the public's faith in technological solutions wavered, a larger question loomed. Who bears responsibility now, when every fix deepens another risk? If this story resonates, subscribe to our channel and stay engaged. What questions do you have for our scientists? Leave your comment below. Your insight matters as Florida's future unfolds before us. As February approached, the black water that had crept toward the Atlantic and Gulf began to dilute. Rain brought fresher flows, and the visible damage lessened slightly. But experts did not pretend the danger had passed. If anything, the episode underscored a sobering truth. There are limits to what engineering and even science can postpone. Dr. Carla Mendoza, leading a field assessment, offered a perspective both scientific and personal. "We worry so much about what's happening at the surface, storms, disasters, but it's the hidden, legacy pollution moving in the depths that will shape Florida's coastline for generations." What the satellite footage from December 2024 revealed goes far beyond the spectacle of mysterious movements and black water from Lake Okeechobee's depths. It exposes the unvarnished consequences of trading long-term safety for short-term gain, of managing disaster at the expense of the invisible. This story is not confined to one emergency. It is a warning for every community that relies on the illusion of permanence. What lies beneath the surface, ignored or deliberately buried, will not remain there forever. When the waters are drawn down, so too is the memory of every previous act inscribed onto the land. Now, scientists, water managers, and ordinary Floridians face a reckoning. Can old debts to nature truly be paid? Will ecosystems once engineered for stability ever find equilibrium again? Or have the choices, accumulated, compounded, set in motion a cycle that no levee or management plan can ever fully stop? As night falls over a landscape stripped bare, the black water recedes, leaving its mark indelible across rivers and coasts, a signature of what happens when the past resurfaces to shape the future. The next page of Florida's water story will be written not just by scientists or engineers, but by everyone who asks. If we cannot undo what has moved, can we at least ensure it never happens again? Thank you for joining us through this urgent exploration. Subscribe to stay informed, leave your questions in the comments, and be part of our continuing search for the truths hidden beneath Florida's shifting waters.